You wake up and there's no sound, no radio, no birds, no background hum of the world, just a deep, unsettling silence. It's not peaceful. It's hollow, like something has been turned off, not gently but surgically. Now imagine that silence is not in your room, it's in the cosmos. Imagine you're the only one left trying to listen, and the universe once full of light and fury has gone mute. In 1977, a 72-second signal was detected by a radio telescope in Ohio. It was strong, clean, narrowband, everything an artificial signal should be. No one ever heard it again. It became known as the wow signal, a cry in the dark. But what if it wasn't a cry? What if it was an echo, a last trace of something or someone that no longer exists? The universe is vast, that much we know. But what we often forget is that it's also indifferent. It doesn't greet us, it doesn't warn us. It just expands, silently, relentlessly. And in that silence lies a strange kind of terror. Because silence, at scale, begins to sound like truth. Somewhere a woman stands in front of a massive screen, tracking signals from space. Her hand trembles slightly as she adjusts the dial. The graph flattens. No spikes, no data, just noise. White, infinite noise. You think silence is the absence of life. But what if it's the final shape life takes? For over 60 years, we've been listening, pointing vast dishes at the sky, scanning frequencies across the spectrum, waiting for a message, any message, a whisper, a rhythm, a pattern too precise to be random. Yet what we receive is always the same. Background noise, cosmic static, the low hiss of an ancient and uncaring void. In a universe of trillions of galaxies filled with trillions of stars, how is it possible we hear nothing? You want to believe it's just distance, or timing, that maybe their signals haven't reached us yet, or that we're not listening on the right frequency. But space doesn't just delay things, it dilutes them. Radio signals fade, light stretches, time itself becomes unstable at scale. Imagine shouting across a canyon so vast the echo returns a million years later, but by then, no one's left to hear it. Consider this. Earth's first radio broadcasts, the ones strong enough to leak into space, began just over a century ago. That signal has now reached just over 100 light years, a microscopic sphere in cosmic terms. Meanwhile, our galaxy alone spans 100,000 light years. If there's someone out there, their silence might not be deliberate. It might just be physics. Still, we send. Still, we listen. The SETI Institute, NASA's Deep Space Network, private observatories, all tuned into the silence, waiting, hoping, even as logic dims and faith begins to fill the gaps. Somewhere in a mountainside facility, a woman walks past a row of quiet monitors. One screen blinks, then goes dark. She pauses, waits, nothing. Maybe the scariest part isn't that we're alone. Maybe it's that we're surrounded, and no one's answering. The stairwell is narrow, metal, cold, the kind that echoes when you walk, even softly. She descends slowly, one hand grazing the rusted rail, the other holding a small cassette player. No music, just static. Each step deeper into the radio array feels like entering a well, carved not into the ground, but into time. Above her, the dome of the old telescope creaks. A relic, once aimed at pulsars, quasars, stars flaring at the edge of physics. Now it listens to nothing. Not even the sky changes. She reaches the bottom, a corridor lined with cables like veins of a machine long dead. The monitors are off, the chairs are empty. But she sits anyway, presses play. The hiss fills the room. White, featureless, ancient. She closes her eyes, and for a moment it's not empty, it's full. Full of everything the silence might be hiding. She exhales, a long, slow breath, almost reverent, then presses stop. We tend to think of the end as something loud, explosive, a collapse, a scream, a firestorm of annihilation. But physics doesn't care about drama. The universe is not dying in a blaze. It's fading, cooling, settling into a state where everything is the same. And when everything is the same, nothing can happen. This is entropy, not just disorder, but equilibrium. A universe where energy is evenly distributed, no gradients, no tension, nothing to drive life, nothing to drive thought. The end isn't fire, it's silence. Right now, stars burn because of imbalance. Energy flows from high to low. Galaxies rotate, planets orbit, molecules form, because the universe is still uneven, still alive. But eventually, entropy wins. Heat death, a state where every atom has reached the same temperature, the same energy level, a uniform soup of dead motion. The numbers are terrifying in their calm. In 10 and 4 years, star formation will cease. In 10 years, even black holes will evaporate through Hawking radiation. And after that, there won't be a that. There will be no difference between here and there, between then and now. Just thermodynamic quiet. A young woman stands in a corridor of mirrors. One by one, the reflections lose contrast, until there's no image left, only a soft gray haze. She touches the glass. It's cold. Entropy isn't chaos, it's order, disguised as stillness. Not the violence of things falling apart, but the quiet of them settling into sameness. Picture a cup of coffee cooling on a table. At first, it's alive with difference, heat flowing into air, molecules in motion. But wait long enough and it becomes indistinguishable from the room. Balanced, flat, done. That's the fate of everything. The more complex a structure is, a thought, a civilization, a language, the faster entropy wants to dismantle it. Meaning is expensive. It resists sameness. But sameness always wins. Eventually, a woman walks along a hallway of light panels. Each panel once displayed a map of a galaxy. Swirling arms, clusters, potential. Now they all show static. Not because the data was corrupted, but because the data is done. There's nothing left to update. The galaxies have faded. The maps outlasted the terrain. Entropy doesn't scream. It waits, and then it forgets. Imagine this. A civilization builds a machine to speak across the stars. A beacon. It pulses every 10 seconds, encoded with mathematics, chemistry, kindness. It beams its signal for centuries, then millennia. But long before the signal reaches its destination, the senders vanish. War, climate, a quiet extinction. The beacon keeps transmitting. There's no one left to know why. This isn't science fiction, it's math. Every time we transmit, whether it's a broadcast, a probe, a greeting burned onto a gold disc, we're sending signals that may never be received. Not because they're undetectable, but because the recipients might no longer exist, or haven't yet begun, or, most painfully, simply don't care. We think communication is two-sided, but in cosmic terms, it's not. It's a dice roll across billions of years and light years. One message sent into a sky that doesn't guarantee an answer. In 1974, the Arecibo Observatory broadcast the most powerful interstellar message ever sent, the Arecibo message. 1,679 bits of data aimed at the globular cluster M13, 25,000 light-years away. It was a hello, but by the time it gets there, that star cluster will have moved. The message will miss its target, a perfect signal, without a listener. Somewhere, a woman opens a drawer and finds an old cassette. She plays it. The audio is warped, incomprehensible. But there's something urgent in it. A pattern, a beat, a meaning, lost. She plays it again and again, but it no longer speaks. We think of a message as a straight shot, from here to there, a clean beam like a lighthouse cutting through night. But space isn't empty. It's thick with dust, plasma, radiation, time. Signals don't travel like arrows. They unravel, they stretch, they weaken with every light year, not linearly but exponentially. Now imagine civilizations separated by 50,000 light years, by billions of years of evolution, by languages based not on words but on electromagnetic phase modulation or logic trees etched in magnetism. What are the chances their signal is even a signal to us? A woman sits in front of a glass wall. On the other side is a vast dark field, filled with faint pulses of light. They flash, shimmer, disappear. Each one is ancient. Each one may be trying to say something, but she has no key, only the silence between. She finds a drawer in a sealed archive. The label is smeared, the code is obsolete, but the lock gives way. Inside, a data crystal the size of a fingernail, transparent, smooth, ancient. She holds it to the light. It reflects nothing. Once, it held a library. A civilization's worth of names, coordinates, memories, everything a species thought was worth preserving. Encoded in a lattice of quantum shifts, but there is no reader left. She places it on a scanner, static. The crystal has degraded, not visibly but subtly. At the quantum level, entropy has done its work. The bits are still there, but their meaning has unraveled, not erased, just loosened. She wipes the dust from the scanner's glass. It smears under her fingertips, soft, as if it were ash. Outside, the stars remain in place, but inside, something has shifted. There's a question scientists rarely voice aloud, not because it's absurd, but because it might be true. What if we are the first, the very first observers, the first minds to crack the code of atoms, to ask what came before the bang, to wonder if we're alone? What if intelligence is so rare, so fragile, That it took 13.8 billion years of trial and error just to produce one species capable of asking the question. It sounds hopeful, heroic even, but it's not. Because being the first means there's no one to guide us, no wisdom to inherit, no elder civilizations to warn us where not to step. We are infants in a nuclear cradle, reaching for godlike tools with the ethics of children. If we are first, the weight of the future rests entirely on us, and we are not ready. But there's another possibility. What if we're not the first, but the last? What if we're survivors of a cosmos that once rang with voices? A final echo after the choir has faded, the last flicker of intelligence in a universe that has already moved on. Fermi's paradox becomes less about where everyone is, and more about when they were. Maybe civilizations rise like sparks, burn hot and brief, then vanish. And maybe ours is just the last fire still burning. A young woman walks through a field of glass spires. At her feet, a plaque etched with characters no one can translate. Her reflection distorts in the crystal. She doesn't understand the message, but she feels it, in her chest, in her bones. The ache of something lost, first or last, beginning or epilogue. The loneliness is the same. We assume the universe is real because it feels consistent, predictable, governed by laws we can measure. But what if that's the point? Not evidence of nature, but of code, of constraint, of simulation so perfect, so total, that it erases its seams. The simulation hypothesis isn't science fiction anymore. It's debated by physicists, philosophers, computer scientists. The logic is seductively simple. If it's possible to simulate conscious beings, and advanced civilizations eventually can, then simulated minds may outnumber organic ones by billions. And if that's true, the odds we are simulated become unavoidable. Still, we think we'd notice. A glitch, an inconsistency, a curtain lifted. But perfect simulations don't break. They're silent by design. Imagine you're building a simulation not for fun, but to study behavior, or consciousness, or reality itself. You're not rendering galaxies in perfect resolution. You're optimizing, you're saving power, you're simulating only what must be seen. Even the cosmic speed limit, the speed of light, may act as a boundary condition. A way to limit how far we can see, hear, or send signals, not because of nature, but because of design. A woman sits in a clean white chamber, on one wall, a window facing deep space. For hours she watches, nothing moves, not a single star. Then she looks away, and for a moment, in the edge of her vision, a flicker. She turns back. The stars are still. What if they were never real until now? What if the silence isn't absence, but communication? Not a void to be filled, but a message to be understood. We've been searching for words, for signals, for pulses that say, you are not alone. But maybe that's not how the cosmos speaks. Maybe the silence is the message. And like all messages worth receiving, it demands stillness. It demands humility, because silence forces reflection, not about others, but about ourselves. What kind of species invents radio and immediately turns it into noise? What kind of minds measure galaxies, yet struggle to hear one another across a room? We fear the silence of the universe, but perhaps we should fear our inability to listen. Across history, silence has always carried weight. The silence after war, the silence in a courtroom, the silence between two people who once loved. Silence is never empty. It's the shape of what could be said, but isn't. And maybe the universe is giving us that shape, not out of cruelty, but to see what we do with it. A woman sits beside an ancient telescope now half buried in the earth. She doesn't look through it. She closes her eyes, breathes. Above her, the stars shimmer, motionless, immeasurable, eternal. They say nothing, yet they are there, unignorable. We wanted an answer. Instead, we got a question. What kind of civilization will we become in the face of nothing? Will we go silent ourselves? Or will we become the signal? The universe may be quiet, but we are not. We are the noise. We are the voice. We are what breaks the silence. What if the silence is waiting for us to deserve the conversation?